Is Africa rich, or poor? Even though Africa is a continent, and has different countries, different races or mix of many races, with their own unique cultures, different tribes, different languages, different topographies, different landscapes, the world keeps talking about Africa, as if it's a single country, with a homogenous group of people. Most of the time, we are shown images of Africa. It seems that the entire continent of Africa is extremely poor. Even the country of South Africa, which used to be shown as the sole exception, and as an economic success story in the past, is now shown in a very poor light. The question is, how much truth is there in such depiction of Africa? In simple terms, is Africa rich, or poor? Well, the answer is very subjective, and not easy to respond in a single word. It involves nuances, explanations, and details with the right context. We'll look into what makes Africa a rich country, unlike the depiction that is shown in the Western media. We'll also explain why Africa appears to be poor, if you view it using the distorted prism and presubscribed notions. If you look at the untouched beauty of Africa, you cannot help but admire nature's unvarnished glory at its fullest height. If you travel through the breadths and lengths of the blessed and beautiful continent of Africa, you'll realize that Africa's landscape and people are far more interesting than the constant depiction of poverty, child labor, civil war, and internal struggles. The rivers of Africa, including the longest one, the Nile, the Congo, the Zambezi, the Orange, the savanna that dominates the landscape of many countries in the southern and eastern Africa, including the Serengeti National Park, the Victoria Falls in Zambia and Zimbabwe, Blue Nile Falls in Ethiopia, the Murchison Falls in Uganda, the Table Mountain in South Africa, the active volcano in Mount Nyiragongo, Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, and so many more incredible natural wonders, make Africa unique among all the continents. Africa's diverse and tolerant population is widely never given any credit, due to the constant news headlines on the civil unrest and conflicts. Are you still wondering if Africa is poor? I know what you are saying. These are such breathtaking sights for sure. What about its financial strength? Isn't that what determines if a country is poor or rich? Well, we haven't forgotten the economics and its metrics. In the 19th century, Africa still had a thriving economy and a vibrant population, until the European imperialists decided they'll tear up Africa, destroy its structure, and devour its wealth. The European powers did not want to go to war amongst themselves, to decide on which African country will become whose colony. Instead, they split up the continent into regions and countries to be shared among them. The African countries had no say on it, due to the superior weaponry and military strength of the Europeans. The European imperialists were determined to plunder Africa of its natural wealth. The question is, what is available in Africa that the Europeans, and later the Americans and the Chinese wanted? The answer lies in another question: what is not available in Africa? It's rich in minerals, including precious elements like gold, diamonds, ores of metals like bauxite, iron ore, cobalt, copper. Africa also has growing oil resources, with the discovery of new oil fields, abundant farmland, plenty of water, as well as skilled and unskilled workforce. Africa is still the most unexplored land standing, while the other continents, where humans inhabited, have been already explored and exploited to a very high degree. This is the reason why Africa is both rich and poor. Rich, because of its underlying economic strength; poor, because this wealth is being plundered by the rest of the nations, including the United States, European nations, and China. China, which was the last to join the bandwagon of exploiting Africa, has shown equal, if not more ruthlessness, in their plunder of Africa. To understand how the exploitation of Africa started, we need to start with the European colonization, starting in the 19th century. Prior to the European colonization, Africa had a wide range of flexibility, in terms of movement, between people of the different regions. Africa was not built on rigid boundaries, but was a lot more fluid, and cooperative to people from other neighboring regions, kingdoms, and nations. There were societies which were stateless, the chiefs ran the daily affairs of the tribe, together with the councils. In simple terms, the governmental structure of pre-colonial Africa was very different from what it exists today. European colonization was done mainly for the natural resources, and they wanted to colonize the whole of Africa, by carving up the continent, among the major European powers, with absolutely no concern for the Africans living there. The colonization was started by France, in Algeria, in 1830, but really expanded vastly, between 1884 to 1914, with many imperial powers, which split the vast continent, based on the proportion of resources, than based on the cultural and language identities, of the people living there. Though France, Germany, Britain, and Portugal were the major players, the colonial powers also included Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, Italy, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and the United States. The colonization of Africa seemed to happen in a hurry, and the quick convergence, the usually warring European powers arrived at, was due to their own dire economic situation. Europe was going through a lot of unemployment, poverty, since many people were unable to be absorbed into the new jobs, created by the transition to industrial revolution, and they were left under abject poverty. The Europeans needed money quickly, and Africa became an easy prey. There was absolutely no human consideration, and plunder was the primary motive. Spreading their religion, and creating new political structures of European design, were the other motives. The upheaval that Africa went through, due to colonization, had a huge impact on its political, religious, and economic independence, to put it mildly. Though Africa is pretty much out of colonization, for some decades now, the resource exploitation, that was started by the colonizers in the 1880s, is continuing even today. In the past couple of decades, China has become a major player, in exploiting the mineral and agricultural resources of Africa, as well as employing high number of child labor, in cobalt and other mines. Cobalt is the major mineral, needed for powering electric cars, used in their batteries. The colonizers used a couple of simple techniques, to control their occupied land. Since the land, divided among the European powers, was now a highly heterogeneous mixture of various tribes, with their unique languages and cultures, the Europeans would create a division among the larger tribes, or identities, and let them enter into conflicts, so that they'll be perennially weak, and will need the European powers to stay, for their stability. Second, the Europeans would always recognize someone, who agrees with them, despite being a corrupt leader, and provide enough support militarily. In return, the leaders will let their nation's resources be exploited by the European powers. These techniques are used even today, by the Europeans, the United States and the Chinese, either directly by the respective governments, or through industrial sectors, effectively. When industrialization was happening all over the Western world, Africa was ignored by the colonizers. There was no development of infrastructure, and the only reason any road or train infrastructure was developed, was to transport the resources that were plundered by the European powers. When the African nations were finally independent, they were staring at massive poverty, economic stagnation, very poor infrastructure and industrial development. Apart from that, the boundaries of these countries were drawn so arbitrarily, there was newfound hostility between different people living within the boundaries of what became independent nations. In other words, a perfect situation for constant instability, or a rule by military dictatorship, and other corrupt leadership, was created due to the underlying poverty, and rivalry left behind, thanks to the colonizers. The cooperation that existed between the people in the pre-colonial times, which is required for any peaceful development in Africa, had been replaced by an environment of high hostility, within a few decades. On food generation, Africa was independent of external imports for centuries. The usage of poor techniques in farming, that didn't keep up with population growth, lack of modernization, excessive chemical usage, and other alterations, have made several farms less productive, leading to Africa becoming a net importing country of food grains, in the modern era. Europe, the US, China, and the entire world, are all heavily dependent on Africa, for their minerals and economic growth, even today, though it is made to appear, that Africa has a one-way dependency on the rest of the world. Many of the UN aid and other aid programs, from the global agencies, or independent nations, have not helped Africa grow, but only made them permanently dependent. These programs have done little to alleviate the African poverty. Many African experts have suggested, loans or aid for industrial growth, and skill improvement, will provide the real solution. This is dearly missing, either by design, or due to lack of understanding. Africa has always been a rich continent, with an abundance of minerals, food, natural resources, great climate year-round, people who have had a wealth of intelligence, and have been industrious, with a cooperative thinking. The current distortion has been created, due to its colonial occupation, but Africa is very likely to find its way back in a few decades if not sooner. Thanks for watching.